evening, one and all. So I, Dr. Saurabh Banerjee, Dean, School of Pharmaceutical Management, IHMR University, welcome you all for this particular webinar on procurement and supply chain. Today, I have privilege and honor to welcome our eminent speaker for this particular session, Mr. Neelkant Bhoi sir. Sir, thank you very much for joining us, and we are indeed very grateful to you for joining us and taking the pains to deliver this particular session, sir. Friends, let me just allow you to read a small profile of Mr. Bhoi ji. Mr. Bhoi sir is a alumnus of IHMR and he's a pass out of the 2001-3 batch. Mr. Bhoi is a seasoned procurement and supply chain specialist, and he has an experience of around 16 years of progressive professional experience dealing in public procurement and supply chain management of medicines and commodities. And he has worked with many different countries. To name of some of them are India, Bangladesh, Ghana, Timor-Leste, and many other countries. He has also worked with some of the prestigious organizations such as UNICEF, World Bank, WHO, Global Fund, DFID, and many others. So he has been supporting these countries in strengthening the procurement and supply chain system. He has been involved in PSM reforms, policy reviews, policy formulations, strategy development, training, and capacity building. Mr. Bhoi sir is currently working as a consultant in supply chain in John Snow R&T India Foundation, and he is providing technical support to the National AIDS Control Program in strengthening the supply chain management of ARV and the commodities in coordination with Plan India. Former to joining JSI, he also served as the executive director in procurement and supply chain management in Uttar Pradesh Medical Supplies, Lucknow, and he has a very rich background dealing with many of the procurement and supply chain policies throughout the world. So, sir, thank you very much for joining us. So, friends, just to give you a brief overview of the program which we have designed. So, this is focused on the access to essential drugs and supplies. And friends, you know that access to medicines is one of the most important components of a well functioning healthcare system. And for delivering high quality healthcare facilities and program outcome, it is very important that the health facilities receive the health commodities in proper and correct order and supply. So the various commodities which a health facility encounters might be medicines, drugs, diagnostics, equipment, and other supplies. So it is very important that all these supplies reach to the health facilities in right quantities, in right time, in right condition, at the right cost. So it is a very important aspect of the health system strengthening focus, and in-depth understanding of the important aspects of supply chain is one of the most desirous attribute which many of the organizations seek for the candidates who wish to pursue their career in the supply chain management systems. So many organizations are working in these areas such as UNICEF, WHO, John Snow, World Bank, Global Fund. So the objective of today's webinar is to introduce you to the topic of procurement and supply chain. And this is an effort to give you a direction for the people who want to pursue their career in the area of procurement and supply chain. Sir, many thanks for joining us, and the dais is yours, sir. Kindly, share your insights with our participants.
And first of all, thanks to IHMR for giving me this platform. It's my privilege and honor to be associated with IHMR since my student days till now.
Yes.
And I would also welcome to all the participants for this session. It's a very important area because everybody knows that looking at the COVID pandemic, we have been struggling day in and day out how to improve availability and access to the stocks and commodities. And if you look at the whole procurement supply chain system and the access components, there are various dynamics which influence the whole access cycle. So today in this webinar, we'll try to discuss the concept of EDL, how it influences the access to essential medicines, different challenges in terms of procurement, supply chain challenges, including quality assurance, including stores and inventory management. So I'll give you the practical approach on this. What are the challenges that we have been facing? What are the procurement supply chain reforms that has been taken place in India so far,
Yes,
and around the world, and the way forward, how to address those challenges, looking at the available resources
right,
and the time frame. So,
right.
and then we can move ahead with, question and answer sessions.
Sure, sure,
And
sure.
of course, if you allow, maybe some, career perspectives in the procurement supply chain domain.
Right, sir.
So this is the whole, idea of this today's webinar.
Great,
So
sir.
again, welcome all the participants. So let me share the slides with you.
Yeah, sir, you can share the slides, sir. So, sir, what would be your advice to the people who wish to come into the area of procurement and supply chain? How could you some guide that the young people who want to come into this area, what they should, how they should move forward? If you could share something.
See, this is a very, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a very upcoming field, and challenging field in the domain of procurement supply chain, because I could see a lot many students also, fresh students also, and also some professionals also. But
Yeah.
the students though who wants to pursue the career in procurement supply chain management, so maybe they can start with going for this graduate courses. Say
Okay.
for example, like public health management or maybe pharmaceutical management,
Yeah.
those which are being offered by different universities.
Right, sir.
They can start working as a procurement supply chain associate, get involved in different programs or national
Okay.
programs, and
Okay.
gradually they can learn the basics of procurement supply chain, how the procurement supply chain functions,
Right.
what is the
Right.
concept of EDL, how can they get involved in different procurement supply chain cycle,
Right.
right from procurement, supply chain, quality assurance, all those sections.
Right, sir. Sir.
And over a period of time, so for
Yeah.
example 5 to 6 years, they could just become a procurement supply chain experts. And I
Okay.
could
Okay.
tell you there is a lot of opportunities in the field, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
let's say huge gap in the procurement supply chain area. And
Mm-hmm.
students can make a career in this field.
Mm-hmm. Sir, your presentation is open. You can just say
Yes,
next
can you come
and
in? Yeah,
yes, the presentation has come, sir.
yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem. No problem.
And
Can you
yeah,
can you see it, sir?
yeah, yeah. Now I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start on this webinar on procurement supply chain reforms in improving availability and access to essential medicines. So this is a session plan I have already shared. So we'll go through different sessions like concept of EDL and access to essential medicines, the procurement supply chain challenges and the way forward, how to improve the access to essential medicines through different procurement supply chain reforms, and the career avenues for the students, those who want to pursue career in the area of procurement supply chain management.
Right,
And
sir.
then we'll go to the question and answer sessions.
Yes.
Next, please. Yeah. So when we talk about access to essential medicines, people might be aware about the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 3. So the objective is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all the stages. So when you talk about SDGs, so access to essential medicines is a very important component, because the medicines or the drugs are the link between the patient and health services, and their availability or absence that could lead to the positive and negative health outcome. So that's why the United Nations has agreed to set a sustainable development goals to achieve this by 2030, and the SDG 3.3 that talks about access to essential medicines and vaccines and other health products, so that the people can lead a healthy and productive life. Next, please. So let us come to the Indian perspective, how the access to essential medicines goes. Next, please. Keep continuing on this. Yeah. When you talk about access to essential medicines, everybody knows that India is the pharmacy hub of the world, and we are exporting medicines to different African countries and Middle East countries and other least developed countries, to more than 200 countries that we have been supplying medicines over decades. But unfortunately, the expenditure on health is the second most common cause of rural indebtedness in India, and we have lack of access to essential medicines. Over 23% of these, people, those who are sick, they don't seek treatment because they're not having enough money to spend. And over 40% of hospital patients have to borrow money to sell their, assets to get themselves treated. So according to the WHO report on the world medicine situation, almost 68% of the people in India, they have limited or no access to essential medicines. This is very grievous problems. Even though we are exporting to different countries, but in our own country, the people are having lack of access to essential medicines. Next, please. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, proceed. So there was a study on by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare that's called Commission on Macroeconomics and Health that was done in 2005. It talks about, next please. It talks about different access issues and availability issues. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. Audible. Yeah.
So the probability of the poor falling sick is 2.3 times more, and rupees 1,000 increase in per capita income increase life expectancy at birth by 3 years. So this study was mainly to estimate the problems related to access in medicines, and it says that 3.3% of the population is getting pushed to below the poverty line on account of medical treatment. Say, for example, whenever a patient goes to medical facilities, he has to incur a lot of medical expenses in terms of drugs, in terms of diagnostics, in terms of other treatment cost, the transportation, and all these things. So out of this, medicine expenditure is the largest expenditure, and because of this, say for example, maybe due to irrational prescription or maybe due to unavailability of essential medicines, 3.3% of the population, they pushed below the poverty line. That's a matter of concern for India. Even in different common improvement missions that is being undertaken by Ministry of Health, it shows that the poor capacity of decentralized procurement, drugs and commodities and their supply chain management. Those are the key challenges for improving access to essential medicines. Even the out-of-pocket expenditure, it is almost 70% of the total health expenditure that is being incurred by the patients when they visit any health facilities. And it's a massive component. So it comes around between 20 to 65% in India. Bearing this in mind, 35% of the people fall below the poverty line. So that's another study by World Bank also. It says that 35% of the people fall below the poverty line, and the out-of-pocket expenditure on medical cost alone may push the population by 2.2%. So you can imagine the kind of situation that we have been struggling day in and day out. Even though government we don't have depth of funds, we don't have technical capacity, but there is some gaps within the whole procurement supply chain domain or the procurement supply chain cycle, right from the bureaucratic, right from the administrative, right from the operational level, right from different technical components of the procurement supply chain cycle. So it's a holistic cycle, and there is some gaps within this cycle, which leads us to inefficient procurement supply chain, and it leads to poor access to essential medicines. According to United Nations Development Group, the medicine access is defined as medicines those are having continuously available and affordable at public or private health facilities or the medicine outlets that are within 1 hour walk from the home of the people. That's the definition that's by the United Nations Development Group. So it talks about the medicine access. So we have been talking about these essential medicines. So what does it mean? What we understand by the essential medicines? WHO has specific definitions for the essential medicines. It says that essential medicines are those that satisfy the priority healthcare needs of the majority of the population, and they are selected with due regard to public health relevance, evidence on safety, efficacy, and comparative cost effectiveness. It means the affordability. Essential medicines are intended to be available within the context of functioning health system at all times in adequate amounts, in the appropriate doses form, of assured quality and adequate information to the patients, to the prescribers, and at a price the individual and the community who can afford to get those medicines. So the whole objective of this essential medicine concept is to optimize the available resources for the fund in terms of money, in terms of our technical know-how, so that we can improve access to these essential medicines. It plays a crucial role in many sorts of healthcare. If available or affordable, of good quality and properly used medicines, it can result into simple and cost-effective outcome of many health problems. And it, of course, promotes equity and helps to set priorities for the healthcare system. The essential drug concept is central to our national drug policy as well. If you look at the essential medicine concept, it also talks about our fundamental rights. We have the rights to access to the essential medicines with irrespective of race, religion, political belief, economic and social conditions. And everyone has the right to a standard living adequate for health of himself and his family, including food, clothing, the medical care, the housing, and the social services. So that's why we talk about access to essential medicines is also a fundamental right. So let us look at this, access domain. What this framework, and they talk about the access framework is consists of the four key components. One is rational selection, sustainable financing, reliable health system, and affordable prices. So let us talk about this rational selection. It talks about the clinical guidelines, the national essential medicine list. When we talk about the affordability, it talks about the information on the medicines that is available, the competitiveness, the differential pricing, the tax margins that is being imposed, which also influence the affordability. Then we talk about the sustainable financing, like how much public funds we have to procure the drugs, how much donations we are getting from different donor agencies, what is our out-of-pocket expenses, what are the grants that we have been receiving, what is the loans or soft loans that we are getting from different donor agencies. So the objective is to ensure the sustainability of the drug financing, and like the reliable system, like what's the diagnosis, what is the treatment regimen, what is the quality assurance system that we have, and what is the supply chain system. The challenges related to availability and the use and access to essential medicines are too many. I mean, there are doubtful drugs are available in the market. India is a huge market. More than 90 to 95,000 formulations are available in the market. We don't know, people, the common pen, they don't know which medicines to procure, what to procure, how to use that. And it's the doctors or the pharmacists at the field level or the facility level who drive this whole access situations. There are minor variations in the prototypes also. There are newly released drugs with insufficient information or without clinical evidence. It is not relevant to basic needs as well, and lack of consistent supply chain system. There are other challenges like the variations in the prescribing practices. In India, like doctors, they are like God. I mean, they are prescribing, and the people are just getting medicines. We have undertaken prescribe prescription reviews in different states, in Himachal, in Odisha, and Rajasthan, and other states. We could see that the doctors they are prescribing number of drugs per prescription is somewhere around 4 to, it varies from 4 to 8. So out of 8 medicines, hardly the patients, they will get 2 or 3 medicines from the government pharmacy. So rest of the drugs they have to purchase from outside. That's how our out-of-pocket burden increases, and puts a burden on the lives of the people and lead them to indebtedness. Even the doctors, whatever they are prescribing, they are not well aware of. I'm not blaming, but this is a situation because so many formulations are available, and that there is, a lot of, advocacy and pressure from the pharmaceutical companies. The doctors are prescribing, in some cases, the irrelevant, combinations, which is not realized as well. So, and of course, the unavailability components, even though the doctors are prescribing, say, example, 2 or 3 drugs or 5 drugs, in most of the cases, in the rural area, rural setup, or any poor health functioning systems, the first people hardly could get 2 or 3 medicines, and the rest of the medicine they have to purchase from outside. So that's why we are talking about essential medicines, which should always be available and affordable. And now you can talk about the practical implications of this access from. I have already discussed about this.
Sir,
so
sir, excuse me, sir. Slides are not moving. Hitendra, are you moving the slides? Yeah. Okay, yeah, sir.
Can you see this?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So this is the access domain that I have already discussed. So I'll talk about the concept of EDL. Before moving to this EDL, I can just inform that what would be the drug selection when we select drug for the EDL. So the importance is, improving sustainable supply of the needed medicines, improving quality of use of medicines, and improving cost efficiency. So the key issues here is, rational selection, like which drugs we have to select for our EDL or the EML, whether it should be linked to our standard treatment guidelines, whether it should be based on our evidence in terms of safety, in terms of quality, in terms of, efficacy, and whether it is being adopted by the government. If there is no ownership of the EDL, in terms of procuring the drugs from the EDL, in terms of prescribing the drugs from the EDL, the whole exercise would be futile. And how we implement this concept of EDL, that's important. That's a prerogative of the government of, how to implement this concept of EDL so that we can ensure availability and access to essential medicines in the state, or at the district level, or at the village level. These are the guidelines for selection of essential drugs. In each country, the essential drugs should be selected by a local committee. The committee is, consists of the experts from different, clinical departments, including the pharmacology department, different, clinical departments, including people from the finance, including people from the procurement division. So they must be part of this local committee who should decide which drugs is to be included in the EDL. The EDL should be in the generic name of drugs. It should offer widest possible coverage of prevalent of disease that is prevailing in that particular area or the particular state based on the epidemiological patterns. What is the level of expertise using the EDL? It should be decided by the authorities. Whether a particular drug that should be at the tertiary care level, or it should be at the secondary care level, or it should be at the primary care level, that should be decided by the committee. EDL should be reviewed regularly, and additional deletions are made simultaneously. It's a flexible. EDL is always flexible. Whenever there is a need to change, the EDL based on the clinical efficacy or on cost effectiveness or the affordability component, the committee may decide based on the recommendations by the committee. If you look at current scenario of antimicrobial resistance, and nowadays we are talking about antimicrobial resistance. So you could see that anybody can just go to the pharmacy outlet and get any kind of antibiotics. You can go to any hospitals, the doctors can prescribe n number of antibiotics to the patients. So ultimately, it's the burden on the healthcare system, burden on the patients. Whether they should use that antibiotics or not, it's doubtful. And it may lead to drug resistance. So this is a major area now we are talking about that whenever we decide.
Boyser?
Yeah.
Sir, whenever you want the slide to be changed, just ask the person, he will change the slide, sir. You just say next.
Okay, is it coming or not coming?
Yes, you will tell, sir, that
Okay.
which slide you are. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you see now?
No, sir, you just ask the person, he will change the slide because you are not changing the slides, na?
Oh, I see.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, I haven't changed.
No problem, sir. Please continue.
So I am coming to guidelines for selection of essential drugs. Can you see it?
Slide number, sir. Slide number.
I have to see this.
Now the slide which is showing is 7 number slide.
Oh, I think you can come to. I'm already in slide number 19.
Acha, theek hai, sir. No problem. Slide number 19. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you see this?
Can you see the slides on your screen also?
Yeah, I can see this.
Yeah, sir. It's coming. Just tell where to stop, sir.
Okay, you can come to slide number 19. So this is the guidelines that we're talking about, selection of essential drugs.
Yeah.
So each country should have their own essential drugs. Even in India, we have different states. They have their own essential drug list. That is referred from WHO EML and from the national EML. So ideally, the process is a committee is set up at the center level or at the state level. We call it at drug selection committee or the ideal committee. That includes experts from different domains like pharmacology department and different clinical departments, members from finance division, members from procurement division, and epidemiologists also involved in the process. And the committee decides which drug has to be included in the list of EML. And the EML should be in the generic name, okay, and it should offer widest possible coverage of prevalent diseases. So within the specific areas or specific states, the prevalence of disease might be different. So it's up to the empowered committee or the ideal committee who will decide which drugs has to be added in the EML based on their safety, efficacy, and quality and affordability parameters. And and it should be reviewed regularly. And if there is any addition or deletion is required, it's the committee who can take a call on that, like which drugs has to be included and which drug has to be dropped out. Next, please. It's a dynamic process. Ideal pharmacy is a dynamic process. It's flexible, efficient, and dynamic. So, and it should be evidence-based that we are talking about. Yeah. Next, please. So what are the challenges in this field? Next, please. There are various factors which affects the access to essential medicines in India. The key challenges are inefficient and inequitous financing mechanism that we talked about in the previous slides also. High and unaffordable drug prices, procurement and distribution of supply chain systems, whether our procurement supply chain systems is efficient enough to procure the right quantity of drugs, the right quality at the right time, procured from the right source and delivered to the right place. So we'll talk about that in later slides. And need for strengthening the regulation of medicines and vaccines, insufficient research and development focus, irrational use of medicines, including antibiotics at the field level, and the stringent product patent regime. These are some factors which affect access to essential medicines. Next, please. So this is the procurement supply chain cycle that we are talking about. We'll focus today on this procurement supply chain. How procurement supply chain.
तो भाई हो सकता है तूने तब खोले जब तक मैंने करा ना,
अनम्यूट करा दीजिए,
तब खोलोगे तो अपडेट हो जाएगा। हितेंद्र रियल टाइम पे होता रहेगा, इसलिए ये वाला बेटर होता ना, बार बार मेल करने से अच्छा। ठीक है, जैसे जुलाई का मैंने जितना मेरे को समझ में आया कर दिया। अब ब्रोशर का क्या स्टेटस है?
So let us focus on this procurement supply chain, how it affects our availability and access components, and how can we strengthen our procurement supply chain system. What are the reforms that we have undertaken till now? What are the challenges that we are facing in terms of procurement supply chain management, and how we can improve the efficiency in the procurement supply chain systems so as to improve availability and access to essential medicines. This procurement supply chain cycle, it starts from the product selection, like selection of essential medicines. Next is our planning and quantification process or the forecasting process. Then you move forward to the procurement. Once we procure, then it is separate to the field level, and then the role of stores and inventory management comes into the picture, and the distribution to the field level. And now we talk about the rationalization of medicines. So within this, we have another component like the LMI system that we also talk about, like how we are integrating all the components and monitoring the availability of the essential medicines. Next, please. So this is the principles of procurement supply chain management, like that we call the 5 R's principle, right? So procuring of the right products from the right source, the right quantity, and the right quality at the right price, procured at the right time. That's a procurement component. And the supply chain component, right products in adequate amounts and delivered to the right place in adequate quantity at the right adequate quality and delivered at the right time. So these are principles of procurement supply chain management that we're talking about. Next, please. So these are the stakeholders you can see on the whole you can say the availability and access domains. In one side, we have the industries or the pharmaceutical manufacturers. Definitely they have unethical promotions, misleading claims, keeping profit margin, huge profit margin. We have got another, player in this, that is the prescribers, be it the, public prescribers or the private prescribers. In some cases, they have lack of objective drug information. They are succumb to promotions by the pharmaceutical companies. Failure of ethics or the regulatory bodies, poor regulatory systems, and the pressure to prescribe me-too drugs, and the misleading beliefs about the efficacy. Then we have on another side, the chemist is there at the private outlets, sale of non-essential drugs, over-the-counter drugs, and the nexus with the doctors. Another player is the regulatory system. In some cases, there is poor price monitoring or the overpricing is there. Irrational combinations are available. More than 90,000 combinations are available. Which drug is of standard quality? Which drug is of having evidence, scientific evidence or the clinical evidence of doubtful efficacy? We don't know. The patients, they don't know. Patients, they are quite vulnerable. They are illiterate. In some cases, there is, of course, online, self-medications is also there. They are illiterate in terms of the clinical evidence of the drugs and inability to choose from the huge drugs or the brands that is available in the market. So the whole, the gamut of these the players, ultimately it's the burden on the patients, those who are using the medicines. In terms of drug resistance, in terms of affordability, in terms of you can say disability. So there are a lot many issues are there So ultimately it puts burden on the patients and leads to, of course, the out-of-pocket expenditure. Next, please. So now that's the reason why we talk about the procurement and supply chain reforms. We are talking about procurement supply chain reforms in the public side of the public procurement. We're now not talking about the private, kind of things. Because in India, it's the government who is, so free distribution of medicines is there. And government is liable to, distribute free medicines, essential medicines to the people. They have the right to get those medicines. But within the available resources, how can the government can, procure and distribute the quality assured, medicines to the patients? It remains a challenge. And when you talk about this availability and access, it's a procurement and supply chain, who decides whether there would be availability or access to essential medicines to the patients or not. Initially, decades ago, there was centralized procurement system where the Ministry of Health is procuring everything and they are, distributing to the states. So over a period of time, it was observed that, there is, stock outs of drugs at the field level. In some cases, there is overstocking, lying, a lot of drugs are lying, getting expired at the field level. So gradually, there is procurement reform started in Ministry of Health, where the empowered procurement wing was set up in 2010-12. If I remember, I was part of that, of course. And then we talk about decentralized procurements. When you talk about decentralized procurement, it's the budget. It's the states who takes the ownership of procuring and supply management of the drugs at the field level. They get the budget from the center, some budget from the domestic funding. They get their own state budgets, and out of that, budget pool, they need to procure the essential medicines which is required for their states, which should be always available and affordable to the patients, and people should get the medicines. So it's the ownership of the states, and that's how the procurement supply chain reform starts. And it's a Delhi model that we talk about, Delhi, model, and the TNMSC model. So they set up their own medical corporations and they started doing procurement. So now it is TNMSC, it is Rajasthan Medical Services, Rajasthan Medical Corporation, the Odisha Medical Corporation, Bihar Medical Corporations, Chhattisgarh, MP, Mizoram, Jharkhand. So a lot many corporations are coming, and the states are taking ownership of decentralized procurement, supply chain management, in order to procure the right quality of drugs, the right quantity, and deliver to the patients the right time, in appropriate doses form. So that's how the decentralized procurement was started. But at the central level, we have got the CMS, the Central Medical Services Society, who takes care of the national programs, like for the RNTCP, the tuberculosis National Tuberculosis Control Program. Then the NICO is there. Then National Vector-1 Disease Control Program is there. RMNCS Plus A program is there. So it's the CMSs who is procuring those drugs for the central programs, central sponsored programs. But most of the drugs is being procured at the decentralized level, at the state level. So when you talk about reforms, it's a reforms in terms of selection of EDL, establishing the drug policy at the state level, establishing the EML at the state level, establishing medical corporation at the state level, having IT-enabled procurement supply chain system like EOCD or DVDMS platforms that is supported by CDAC, the Government of India. So these are some of the reforms. And of course, EVN, Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network, is an excellent system that is being successfully implemented in India and other countries to take stock of the vaccines, the real-time stock positions of the vaccines at the field level. Now, then we have the Government of India GEM portal is there to bring in transparency and competitiveness. Next, please. So these are some of the reforms that have been taken place over a period of time in India. And the benefits of reforms that, there is steady availability of drugs and switches to the public, bring a lot of, of course, the political willingness is there. The stockouts are eliminated. A better quality control is in place in some states, for some other states are struggling at the moment. Wastage minimized, and there is effectiveness of the healthcare delivery and savings on account of efficient procurement. But these need to be documented at the moment at the state level, because we don't have evidence on those, reforms which has, impacted the whole access domain. How the procurement supply chain reforms has, impacted the access to essential medicines at the state level, at the district level, or the village level. So probably the Government of India or maybe the NITI Aayog or any research groups, they may focus on these, reforms initiatives, how they have impacted the overall access to essential medicine. So we have miles to go. I mean, it's not the end, it's just the beginning. We're just starting with reforms at the state level, reforms at the central level. But looking at the current, kind of global, geopolitical situations, the COVID situations, so whole dynamics will change over a period of time. So we have to rethink on our approaches, whether we should go for decentralized procurement of certain, drugs or consumables or, commodities, or we should go for, decentralized procurements. So it's a centralized versus decentralized. So like how to ensure such kind of, initiatives so that we can improve access to essential medicines. Next, please. This is the parameters that is used to study the PSM practices, procurement supply chain practices, like the legal status of procurement organizations, that are medical corporations, that is constituted, involving the, different bureaucrats, different, NGO members, and, other political partners or the donor agencies. The drug procurement budget, like what's the budget that is being, provided to the corporations over a period of time to procure essential drugs. What is the essential drug list? What is the status of those drug list? What is the demand estimation and forecasting process? How the procurement tendering process is going on? What is the procurement guideline they have? What is the standard operating procedures they have been following? What is the quality control mechanism? And what is the distribution processes or the supply chain or inventory management processes? What is the payment mechanism, the database management? So these are the parameters which needs to be evaluated to understand the efficiency of any corporations or the medical corporations that is being operated at the state level, or maybe the central procurement body at the central level. Next, please. So let us talk about procurement distribution systems. What are the challenges that we practically faces at the face at the ground level? It's the poor quantification process at the field level. If you look at the the knowledge and level of the people, those who are involved in the quantification process, it's very difficult to expect from them that they will quantify the drugs that is being needed for the procurement to be done at the central level or the state level. So in most of the cases, it is the top-down approach. So the quantification is done at the top level, of course, taking feedback from the field level. But ideally, it should have been the bottom-up approach. For the bottom-up approach, we need to have the systems in place. The people need to be trained on that. The system, the IT-enabled system should be there in the field level to track the consumption pattern of the drugs, to tell us how much quantity is being consumed and what is the quantity that we should require for our next procurement cycle. So it's ultimately the poor quantification process which affects our procurement cycle. Poor tender practices and procedures, poor financial management and payment methods. So if I talk about one by one, so it will take one day, but let me just brief you because we don't have time, because we have limited time to talk about this. We have inaccurate quantification, of course. And the poor tender practice I have already talked about. The payment system is there. Next, please. I have already talked about this, the bottom, top down and bottom up approach. Next, please. So what we recommend that the quantification should be of bottom up approach. For that, the people need to be trained. So the IT enabled system need to be there at the field level, or the LMS should be there at the field level for the rational forecasting. And of course, time to time, studies on the, actual consumption pattern at the field level, the prescription behavior of the physician at the field level, which ultimately, affect the whole indentic cycle. Because some drugs may not be used at the field level, but still we are procuring. So that would be piled up at the field level, and it leads to expiry and loss to the exchequer. Next, please. So then we talk about the procurement component. So non-availability of central as well as decentralized procurement plan. and the procurement are not done on an as on need basis. It's done basically as on need basis is done. If you look at the procurement supply chain cycle of different state level corporations, we are struggling day in and day out on the procurement plan. We don't have a procurement plan. Ideally, the procurement plan should be prepared in consultation with the field level officials and the central level officials, the state level officials. And based on that, the budget should be earmarked for that. So this exercise is very important when doing procurement planning, and it is the first step of our whole, procurement supply chain cycle. And for that, the people need to be trained. There should be political will, there should be bureaucratic will as well. And then only you can say that with a standard procurement supply chain plan, then we have a budget for this. We need to procure drugs at the right time, at the right quality, and the right quantity. Next, please. So what I suggest, basically, we may also agree on this, that we need to have a standard bid documents. It's the basic of whole procurement cycle. If we don't have a standard bid documents, then it will lead to inefficient procurement, or maybe legal battles which may delay the whole procurement cycles. We may not get sufficient bidders to participate in the tendering process as well, and the price would escalate. The more the bidders they will participate, the more the transparent procurement system is there, more the bidders will participate. There will be competitiveness, and we can get good value for money, get good price of the essential medicines. Then we have the standard operating procedures for procurement, what to do, what not to do, how it will be carried out, who will carry out the procurements. That should be part of our SOPs. And the procurement guidelines, we should have that guidelines. I've talked about the annual centralized plan, the budget availability, and the training component. I have already talked about this. There should be open competition, and we need to closely monitor the contract and monitor the performance of the vendors, to ensure that the efficiency in the procurement supply chain cycle. Next, please. We'll next come to the distribution, storage, and inventory management component. If you look at the supply chain cycle, there is poor distribution planning at the state level, at the district level. There is no dedicated fleet mechanism to transport the drugs from the central warehouse to the regional or district warehouse, and from the district warehouse to the last mile, that is to the CSCs or the PSCs and the sub-centers. In some states, they have, of course, like Odisha, they have started this last mile approach, and they have outsourced the supply chain, it is transport component, to third-party logistics provider. Even at the center level, also the NACO is also experimenting on this, I can say. So they have also outsourced this transport mechanism to a third-party logistics provider to ensure that the ARV drugs are available at the field level in the right time. Of course, we have our warehouses at the state level and district level. Everybody knows the kind of warehouses that is available. In some cases, it's very doldrum conditions. There is seepages are there. There is no racks, no pallets. We don't have that ELMI systems to monitor the drugs at the field level. We don't have computers to monitor the drugs. People are not trained there. So there is insufficient infrastructure like racking system also there. Inadequate cold chain mechanism is there, like the walk-in coolers, the ILS. The manpower they are untrained and inadequate staffing. We have been talking about the human resources for health. So now it's time for the state and the center to think about adequate staffing at the warehouse level. I'm sorry to say, but at the state level or the center level, or maybe at the district level also, if somebody has visited the district supply chain structure or saw them, or the warehouses, it is the pharmacists, only pharmacists, single pharmacy, who is managing everything, right from dispensing of drugs, right from inventory management, right from documentation, like from getting involved in other national programs. So we cannot expect a pharmacist to do all the jobs at a time. So we need to think about the staffing, structure at the field level. We need to pay them good salary. We need to, look after their, training and components, their knowledge skill. We have to, upgrade their training skill as well. We need to standardize the warehouse. So it's a holistic approach that we need to adopt to ensure that, we should have a proper procurement supply chain system in place. Next, please. So what I would suggest that we can think of additional manpower dedicatedly for the supply chain purpose. Need to build the human capacity, build the capacity of the human resources at the field level. Maybe we can start with the training of trainers, maybe at the state level, involving the district people, and then they can in return train the people at the field level. You'll be surprised to know, I can share with you, we have undertaken the different training programs for the pharmacists in Odisha and Jharkhand and UP. You'll be surprised to know that, the pharmacists, those who have been working in the health system for the last couple of decades, they have not yet been trained single time on the stores and inventory management, the standard practices on stores and inventory management. Nobody has told them like how to manage the drugstores, the basic things. So this is the need of the hour. We need to provide them training. We need to build their capacity. We need to upgrade their skills. We need to motivate them. We need to involve them in the whole process so that you can see the real impact at the field level. Next, please. Then we can talk about the quality assurance component. At the state level, definitely we have been procuring drugs from the quality assured, pharmacy. They have their own internal quality control systems. But when the drugs are delivered at the field level, we need to ensure their quality. So for that we don't have any enable accredited laboratories at the state level. We don't have any drug recall mechanism. If something happens, at some kind of drug reaction happens at the field level, the people are not trained. They are not sensitive how to move forward with the drug recall mechanism. So these are basic things they need to be trained when you are taking training programs for the pharmacy at the field level. Different districts, they have also been procuring different drugs from the local budget. That also creates a big problem at the field level. Delay in getting the quality report from the employed laboratory, that also delay the process. Sometimes the drugs are being sent to the field without having quality assurance clearance, because sometimes we are under pressure that the drugs should be there at the field level. So even though the drugs are there at the store without having any QA verification, sometimes that is sent to the field level. So that may pose a big threat to the quality assurance component. Next, please. So what would suggest that we should have own, the states should have their own NABL laboratories. Maybe you can opt for the PPP model kind of things. We can motivate the different players with quality testing laboratories to set up their own base there. We can standardize the drug recall mechanism process there. We can strengthen the drug regulatory system there. We can involve the drug regulatory bodies to pick up random samples from the field level, and test them. Like what's the quality of those drugs that is being circulated to the field level. We can also think of this Raman spectroscopy for quality testing. This is a handheld this Raman spectroscopy. So Dr. Saurabh may talk about later more on that. And we can also have this GPS mini lab. We have tried in Himachal Pradesh through GIZ support way back in 2005 when we were operating the drug developing funds. That was also an excellent system where we can test 30 to 40 essential medicine instantly at the field level. So it's the kind of quality testing we can do. So these are different options where you can standardize our quality assurance systems. Next, please. So the way forward is, what I could say that we need to standardize our, operational component right from the, forecasting, right from procurement, right from distribution, the stores and inventory management, the rational age component. So if we standardize the whole procurement supply chain cycle, the processes, then definitely over a period of time, we can see that, there will be a lot of impact in the availability and access. And moreover, additional budget provision may be, set for the state level or the district level also. Because if you look at the current global situation, the COVID-19 this situation, what I can presume in the coming years, there will be, lot of shortage of budget at the state level and the central level. Even the donor agencies also, they need to struggle like how much budget they have to pump in, looking at their own, because they are already struggling at their own countries. So we can expect a, poor inflow of global partner in the global donors. So there will be poor inflow of money from the global donors as well. So we need to ensure our own budget. We need to standardize our own system. We need to capitalize our own resources. So within the available resources, we can standardize our processes. We can build the capacity of the procurement supply chain management professionals. We can build the capacity of the stores. We can standardize the different warehouses. We can link off through different IT-enabled systems. We can, standardize the prescribing behavior of the physicians. We can also educate the pharmacists, the Anganwadi workers, the ASA workers on use of medicines, especially the antibiotics. So within this ambit, we have to standardize our own processes so that we can save money and we can judiciously use our budget so that we can meet the health need of the larger population. So that's the way forward that I'm looking forward in coming years, and probably different institutions like IHMR or any academic institutions and other CSR partners or NGO partners or NITI, they can come forward in one platform. We can have a kind of brainstorming sessions like what are the challenges that we can face due to this COVID-19 situations, what is the way forward, what's the strategic approach that we should take, because we are already struggling with the API component that's being imported from China. So we need to think strategically, like how judiciously we can use our budget, how strategically we can put our resources, and we can meet the this demand of the essential medicines at the field level. And that's over a period of time we can say that yes, we have reduced the out-of-pocket expenditure of the people. We have standardized our procurement supply chain processes. We have rationalized our drug prescription patterns, and we can see that there is a overall health impact over a period of time. This is the whole objective. Next, please. So for that, we need to have a clear policy guideline and SOPs to deal with public health procurement supply chain practices. And of course, we need to attract and retain the supply chain leadership or technical talent at different levels. It's not like the whole bureaucratic system which should lead or drive the whole procurement supply chain cycle. It's the technical people, those who have been practically working at the field level, this would be, retained and given additional responsibility to be part of the team, and some kind of practical approach or participatory approach would be there. It's not like the typical bureaucratic system which would drive the whole procurement supply chain cycle. We need to rethink on this. So we need to bring in experts from different domains, from the corporates, from different agencies, who can provide leadership and strategic guidance to different medical corporations to strengthen the procurement supply chain system. So over a period of time, we can see that we could ensure availability of essential medicines at the field level. And we need to foster transparency, accountability, and strong governance in the supply chain for a positive outcome, including the political bureaucratic buy-in. If there is no political bureaucratic buy-in, it's very difficult to run any system, especially the medical corporations. Those who have been, people have been working day in and day out. They are struggling day in and day out. So we don't have dearth of good technical people, but it's the political and bureaucratic buy-in who will motivate them to put in their best and drive the whole corporations and drive the whole procurement supply chain components and ensure that the drugs, essential medicines are available at the field level. So the ultimate objective is, to provide good quality, affordable medicines to the public at large, at the field level, to the poor people, those who can afford to buy essential medicines. So that's our whole objective, and that's how we have been working. And I would request all the stakeholders, maybe, in different forums, we can have a discussion or debates and have a rethink on how to change our approaches to drive the procurement and supply chain components. We need to strengthen our human resources for health. We need to have additional funding for strengthening our warehouses. We need to have additional funding for putting in manpower. So that's how we have to, we need to holistically think on this to see an impact at the field level. Next, please. This is, we have already discussed. Of course, the autonomous procurement is, they are doing excellent job in UP, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, but there are a lot of challenges are there, and in the coming years, probably we'll sort out those issues also. We can also think of, outsourcing the IT component, the quality testing component, the supply chain component, like the 3PL model. Though it's not a sustainable model over a period of time, because we need to establish our own supply chain system, the quality system, the IT system. But at the moment, till the time we get some momentum, probably government can think of outsourcing these kind of skills. In some states, they have already done it. So we can think on that. There should be sufficient budget allocation to meet the drug demand and administrative costs. We can think of pre-qualification process to promote competition and enforce quality. We can empower the MSME people. We can strengthen their capacity also, who can be a part of this whole exercise. We should have proper protocols for regular inspection of supplier premises. That's mandatory quality testing, external quality testing. And of course, there's a payment to suppliers in time. That's very important. So we can ensure timely payment to the suppliers so that the suppliers can get motivated and get involved in the bidding process. There should not be any dearth of money for the procurement corporation. They should not struggle for money, because it's ultimately affect the whole life and death, that could affect the whole life of the people at the field level. Next, please. So this is how my presentation was, but definitely I would appreciate any feedback from the people, and if you have any specific question or answer, then we can try to address those. Thank you,
Great, sir. Great, sir. Sir, many thanks, and you have very beautifully summed up all the important aspects which are revolving around the procurement and supply chain. So the whole idea was to give the people an insight that how important is the procurement and supply chain. There are 2-3 questions, sir. I would just like to read it.
Mm-hmm.
The first question is, sir, what is the scope of public-private partnership in supply chain management in India, and particularly in the COVID situation?
Mm-hmm.
What is the scope of public-private partnership in supply chain in COVID situation?
See, the whole situation now changed a lot. I mean, probably we can involve the corporate partners. They can get involved in the supply chain process. We can think of 3PL logistics providers in the process. We can think of different private bodies. We can involve different institutions or academic institutions also in the whole process. So we can pull in their resources, their expertise in strengthening the supply chain system or streamlining the supply chain system. We can also rope in different the corporate partners like the Big Four or many other technical partners So who can provide their expertise in this, how to streamline the supply chain system, how to resource, source the quality assured products, specifically this looking at the COVID situations.
Right.
So this is how I can envision getting to involve the NGO partners, the corporate partners, different academic institutions in this whole exercise, so that we can streamline the supply chain system.
Thanks, sir. So linked to this, there is one more question, that how does the PSM process differs in public hospitals vis-a-vis PPP model? So, and how do you engage the private pharma distribution networks?
Sorry, come again.
Sir, yeah, the question is that how does the PCM process differs in the public hospitals via vis-a-vis the public-private partnership, and how do you engage the private pharma distribution network? How do we engage the private pharma distribution networks?
See, if you look at the public and private procurement system, it's quite different. Public procurement supply chain system, see, we are doing service. It's not for profit. Whereas in private setup, it's for the profit. That's the basic difference, I can say.
Yes.
And of course, in the private setup, it is well organized. They have well organized, IT-enabled system, well organized, well-trained people are there. But in the public system, we don't have that technical know-how skill of the people, those who are dealing public procurement supply chain system at the field level. So maybe we can think of private distribution network, but it's not a sustainable model, because see, we are talking about sustainable model of public supply chain system.
Right,
we are talking about strengthening the building the capacities of the people, those who are dealing with procurement supply chain on regular basis.
Right.
So we need to build their capacities, probably as a short-term kind of to bridge the gap, or maybe we can think of some private distribution network or the third-party logistics provider as well, who can be roped in. Initially, we tried this at the central level. There are procurement agencies were hired. Like different agencies like UNOPS were hired, Rights Limited were hired.
Right.
So they were procuring, because at the time we don't have the capacity. The government doesn't have the capacity to procure the drugs. They don't have the technical know-how at that time. So over a period of time, we moved to our self-guided procurement. We established empowered procurement wing at the ministry level.
Yes.
And it's the people, those who are working at the ministry, they were leading that. And now we have CMSs, Central Medical Services Society. They are dealing procurement at the central level.
Right, sir.
So as a short-term option, definitely you can think of but it's not a sustainable kind of thing. Yes, we can hire some private distribution network, the private procurement agency for some period of time, build our capacity, maybe through a PMO model, and then we can establish the standard practices, and then we can just hand it over to the government.
Right, sir. Right.
So that's the approach. I think I agree on that. I agree on this.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. There is one question from Ayush Mittal that he says that, sir, I'm Ayush Mittal, starting this. I want to know that what are the personal qualities an individual have to have a great field in this field. So he's basically asking that what are the skill sets a person needs for procurement and supply chain, who wants to pursue a career in this. What are the personal qualities?
Thank you, Mittal. But I would say that, first of all, you should have the aptitude, the learning attitude for this. And I appreciate that you have that skill. Interest on this procurement supply chain management. Yes. So that's the first step that you have already taken. So the field is open to you. Anytime you can enter into this field. You can start your career. You can pursue your maybe some professional programs from different academic institutions. Of course, IHMR is offering. And you can start working as procurement supply chain associates in some government agencies, get involved in some procurement corporations, learn the basics of procurement supply chain, how it functions. And over a period of time, definitely you'll be a procurement supply chain experts in this field. Yes. And definitely I can say that in this field, I'm telling you from the beginning that there is dearth of professional people in this field. So the young graduates, maybe they can think of this domain and they can pursue their career. So there's a lot of opportunity, taken a lot of engagements, and I think sky is the limit for you.
Exactly, sir. We have done with the question, sir. There is for the sake of the people who have joined us, I would like to just share that, sir. Can you just share that name of some of the international organizations who are working in the area of procurement and supply chain? This is, I'm asking for the people who want to come into this area and explore the international organization. Could you name some of the few organizations which are working?
See, there are n number of organizations who are working in the procurement supply chain domain. I can tell you that if there is no products, there is no program. There's a basic principle.
Yes.
If you don't have medical products, you cannot run a single program. Our health facility cannot run for a single day.
Right.
So now, apart from our Ministry of Health and the state health department, even in NHM, in the state health societies, the central level ministry, there are other organizations, many more organizations like UNOPS is there, World Bank is there, Global Fund is there, Evidence Action is there. So many, n number of organizations they are there where procurement and supply chain is a very important area, and everybody is focusing in this domain. JSI is there. So many organizations are there.
Yes.
So there is lot of opportunities, I can say.
Yes, sir. Yes. I think done with the questions, answers, and you have covered all the aspects of procurement and supply chain. And we have also discussed what are the job opportunities in the area of supply chain, what are the job positions you have already, what are the organizations who are working in the chain. I think with this thing, not getting any other questions. So this one, so I, on behalf of management, sir, I take this opportunity to thank you for such a elaborate presentation, and it was really very useful. The whole idea was to share that how prominent and how demanding is the area of procurement and supply chain, not only but internationally also. So, sir, once again, many thanks for joining IHMR. You are a member, you are a part of the IHMR family. But thank you for the to join us and such a elaborate presentation. So on behalf of School of Pharmaceutical Management, the participants, I would like to once again extend heartiest thanks to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your initiatives, and thanks to IHMR for giving me this platform to talk about procurement supply chain management reforms. But I must say that this is the beginning, and this is a kind of a small webinar of 1 hour session. Yes. But if the people, those participants, I could tell them that it's a huge area. I mean, it's not a 1 hour affairs to understand the whole procurement supply chain dynamics. So probably maybe if there is any opportunity comes, maybe we can have more face-to-face discussions.
Sure.
Or maybe we can have more, participations and one-to-one discussions with people, maybe at IHMR. And maybe you can have more this kind of interesting sessions in future also.
Yes.
So thanks again. Thanks, Dr. Saurav. Thank you so much for your initiatives and your hard work. And I wish you all the best. And thanks to IHMR. Thanks the management as well.
Thank you, sir.
This opportunity.
The initiative was to give the a spark to the fire, and you have ignited the spark, sir. Yeah, and we look forward for many such webinars in the future. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you once again. Have a nice day, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.